What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Two-Wheeled Rider YouTube channel. My name is Mario Orsini, and in today's video I'm going to talk to you about why a motorcycle specific GPS is a must-have for motorcycle tours. So why would I need one of those when I already have a perfectly good smartphone? I don't know why you'd want a smartphone or one of those GPSs when for $8 you can get yourself a great atlas or maybe even a free map. This is going to be interesting. Better stay tuned. All right, so don't worry, you don't have to put up with three of me in this video, just one. But I am going to break down three different devices: the motorcycle-specific GPS, the smartphone, and the atlas/map. Now, one thing I'm not going to touch on in today's video is your computer or laptop. Obviously, those can be used for trip planning purposes, but that's not something most people are going to pack on their bike. So for the purposes of today's video, we're going to talk about those three, I hate to call them devices, but those three items because they are something you can pack on your bike to bring with you on your next motorcycle adventure. So I'm going to break down the pros and cons, at least the pros and cons in my opinion, of each of the three. Then I've come up with, I believe it was seven different categories I'm going to rank them in. We're going to give them a score for each category for how they rank. We're going to give a winner score, and then I'm going to break down how I use each of these devices. So let's get into it. We're going to start with the motorcycle-specific GPS. We're going to start putting up some of the pros right now. One, it's motorcycle-specific. And what that means is, at least a lot of these motorcycle-specific ones are built for motorcyclists. So they have things in there like curvy road routes and service logs, and you can get tire pressure monitoring systems that'll plug into them. I mean, they're specifically designed for a motorcycle. They're made to fit on a motorcycle. And part of that that comes along with that is the fact that they are durable. They can handle some fuel vapors or a little bit of fuel splash on them. They'll obviously hold up to rain conditions. They'll hold up to extreme hot conditions and cold conditions. You're not going to have any problems out of the device with any of those things. Vibrations, depending on what type of bike you ride. I'm not going to call out a specific brand, but that vibrate a little bit more. It's not going to hurt the electronics in it. And shouldn't hurt it if it falls. So, they are motorcycle specific. That's one of the pros. They'll basically work anywhere. You don't need a cell signal or anything for them. They're GPS. As long as you've got, if you're in a tunnel or something, you'll have a little bit of problems. But as long as you got, a clear path to the sky, they should work. They come, most of them anyway, at least this one. This is the Garmin 590 LM. They've since come out with the 595. They come with lifetime map updates and software updates. So, I'm sure it's not really lifetime, but it's going to last you a really, really long time. I already talked about how tough they are. The other cool thing about them is they work with motorcycle gloves. It doesn't matter if you're wearing your summer-only gloves or you've got your big, heavy winter gloves on. You tap on the screen, it is going to respond. And the other cool thing about it is if you've got a Bluetooth headset, it'll hook up to that, so it'll give you turn-by-turn directions in your ear. You can hook up MP3s or run your smartphone or MP3 device through it and control it through here too. Some of the cons, they're expensive. I mean, I think this one, I don't remember what we paid for it back in the day. It was probably around $800. You're going to spend for a good one probably $500 or more. So they are not cheap. The other con with it, it's an electronic device. And if we know anything about electronic devices, we know that at some point they will fail. And you obviously don't want it to fail on you during a motorcycle trip. And the other con is, while it does come with lifetime updates, you've got to keep it updated, because if you don't plug this thing in your computer every once in a while for the latest software or map update, you're going to have outdated maps. Roads do change. You want to make sure you're up to date because you don't want any surprises when you're out on a 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, 20,000 mile trip only to find out, oh wow, that road doesn't exist anymore. Now what do I do? Next up, we're going to move on to the smartphone. We're going to go over some of the pros and cons of it. One of the pros is you probably already have one. A lot of folks already have one of these things. Most have converted over from flip phones. So you already have a smartphone. The other cool part about it is there are a lot of different map apps available on it, whether you're using the built-in native map app or you're using Google Maps or Waze, or there's tons of different apps for GPS on these things. They have real-time traffic updates through most of the apps anyway, so if there's an accident ahead, it can reroute you, or if there's a road closure, it can reroute you live time to make sure you don't get stuck. And once again, it will also hook up to your headset if you've got a Bluetooth headset in your helmet. Just keep in mind, I'm not going to go over every single pro of a smartphone. We're only talking about these devices as it comes to motorcycle route planning or motorcycle GPS. I'm not talking about all the other apps that are on here and the fact that you can use this thing to call home or emergencies. It's not what we're talking about in today's video, just the purposes of trip planning or trip routing. So next I'm going to go over some of the cons, and I've got a lot of them when it comes to smartphones. The biggest one is you cannot always get cell phone service. Now I know some people are going to disagree with me, and obviously if you're in a metropolitan area you're going to get it, but when you go out on a big motorcycle trip and you get out west into parts of Montana or even Oregon and Idaho, or hell, even here on the East Coast in West Virginia, make all the jokes you want, but we do have places that you still cannot get cell phone service, and if you can't get service, this thing is not much use as a GPS. Next thing is, it's expensive. Now, if you already have it, great. Maybe there's no added cost, except if you don't have an unlimited data plan or something like that. But if you don't have one, the latest iPhone and Android devices are going to run you anywhere between, I don't even know what we're at anymore, $700 and $1,200. These are expensive, and they also come along with a monthly fee for your data, text, and calls, which can run you anywhere between probably, maybe you can get them on the low end at $30, but chances are it starts out around $50 a month and goes up to well over $100 a month. They can be impacted by the weather. Now, it is true you can get some sort of case on it. This one has one of the OtterBox cases. However, in extremely hot temperatures or out in sunlight, at least this iPhone, and I know some of the Androids will too, they will overheat in extreme conditions. If you don't have it in some sort of case, some of these are, a lot of them are water resistant now. There's very few that are actually waterproof, so you could ruin it that way. To me, another big con is you're distracted while riding, because you're going to have your data and stuff on. I guess you could go in and turn off your notifications for things, but you're going to be tempted. You're going to see those text messages pop up, and you're going to see those emails pop up, and that's just not something I want while I'm out riding. So to me, distraction is a bit of a con. Another one of the cons to me is apps crash. They're constantly being updated. We constantly have new operating system updates. And when that happens, there's usually a little bit of wonkiness when it comes to your apps until everybody gets their set up. So there's the possibility the apps are going to crash. Also, I guess we could throw the con in, again, an electronic device, so it will fail at some point in time. And then finally, one last con is they're not glove friendly. Now, I know some of you are going to say, oh, but I've got gloves that you can use on a touchscreen. Great, I know there are some gloves that do that, but when you put gloves on, unless they're some of the skinnier ones, but when you might be able to operate it a little bit, you probably shouldn't be typing on any of these things while you're going down the road. But winter gloves and waterproof gloves and stuff like that, even if they are touchscreen friendly, become cumbersome, because even on these larger phones, they still have a relatively small screen. And I know it looks a little bit bigger than this, but my point is, one of these motorcycle-specific GPSs has big buttons on it or big touchscreen areas because they know you're going to be touching it with your glove, where these are, they're just smaller and there's a chance you're going to make a mistake when you're typing something in. Next up, we are going to talk about the almighty Road Atlas. Now, this is one of the Rand McNally's. This is the new one. This is US specific. You should be able to get an Atlas for just about any country or part of the world. And in addition to the Atlas, we're just going to throw maps in there because I don't want to break that down into something separate. Maps serve exactly the same purpose as an Atlas. They're usually just more specific to one smaller area. And where an Atlas has tons of pages, a map usually just folds out and you have one big page. So those of you that have read my book, shameless plug, Motorcyclist Guide to Travel, know that I love a Road Atlas. So I'm going to go over the pros and cons of it. And while I don't need to plug it because it has nothing to do with this, I do have a second book out on the market, Two Up Motorcycle Riding, a beginner's guide for riders and passengers, which is great for both riders that are new to riding two up and passengers that are new to riding on a motorcycle. So check these out. They're available on Amazon. They're also available on my website if you want a signed copy, and I'll send you some stickers as well. But let's talk about the Atlas. So let's go over some of the pros and cons of the Atlas. First pro, it's cheap. I paid $8 for this one, $7.97. I mean, it doesn't get much cheaper than that. Now, I know what some of you are going to say. Yeah, but you got to get a new one every year because roads change. Sure, I could buy them for the next 100 years and they're still only going to be about the price of my latest cell phone. So not real worried about that. The other nice thing about it, it doesn't break. It's not an electronic device. You can do whatever you want with it. Now, if you set it on fire or you got it too wet and didn't allow it to dry out, I suppose you could damage this thing, but otherwise, all you have to do is open it up to a page and it always works. To me, one of the biggest pros with this is it helps you learn your route because it's far more detailed than anything you can bring up on a computer screen or an iPhone screen or a GPS screen. You can see the destination or the route you're taking plus everything around it. You'll see the other roads that pop off of it. You'll see national parks, state parks, those sorts of things. So it helps you learn the route better when the inevitable happens that you have to reroute or there's a storm coming or there's a road closure or whatever. You've already studied it, whether you realize it or not, and you'll see the next junction in the road and go, oh yeah, I remember that road connects up with such and such, and if I hop on this other one, I'll end up in the town that I want to be in tonight. So it's great for just learning your route and learning all of the other possible routes you could take in the event that you need to reroute on your trip. Speaking of learning the route, and I kind of already touched on it, it gives you a much larger viewing area. They show far more detail on the pages of an atlas or a map than you could ever expect to do on your computer screen, GPS, or smartphone. Now, yes, on most of those devices you can zoom in and then get the detail. But because we're dealing with these large pages on here and just the way it's formatted, I can look in most cases, not every single state, but in most cases I can see an entire state and all of the national routes, all of the state routes, and most of the local routes, plus all of the points of interest that they've already got marked on here, all in a single view. I don't have to zoom out. I don't have to zoom back in. So you get much more detail on an actual map or atlas than you do on any of the electronic devices. So two more pros for me is one, you are in full control of picking out your route on this. You're not just typing in two destinations like you do in Google Maps and it gives you the fastest route or the shortest route or whatever. You can route whatever you want. So if you see something interesting on here and you go, I want to go there, great, go that way. It's not going to tell you what to do. The other thing is this allows you to adapt on the fly. You're going to get to areas where your electronic devices aren't going to know that there's a road closure or that there's a storm up ahead you're trying to avoid or whatever the case may be. Pull over to the side of the road, whip this bad boy out, take a look at it and go, great, I can go this way, I can pick this route, I can backtrack. You can do whatever you want because you never have to worry about this thing failing and you're always going to have a large picture to look at to reroute in the inevitable case that you're going to have to. So unfortunately, the Atlas is not perfect. None of these devices are, and I do have 4 cons when it comes to the Atlas. The first one is you can't really use it while you're riding. With some maps you could because you have a tank bag and you could put it in the map section if you've got a clear spot in it. I've yet to see a tank bag that's going to fit an Atlas of this size. So unfortunately, though, you could use your smartphone or your motorcycle-specific GPS to see the route ahead. It's not going to work with this. Next con is it takes up a lot of space on the bike. Now, granted, I lay mine flat in my top case, so it doesn't really seem like it takes up much space. But when you compare it to that of the smartphone and the GPS, it's obviously much larger. Another con of the Atlas is there are no real-time traffic updates. There are no traffic updates at all. It is just a map, so you're not going to get any live feedback while you're going down the road. And finally, a con I already touched on, you should buy a new one every year because roads do change, things get rerouted, new roads get added, and to be the most up-to-date, you should just spring for the $8 and get yourself a new one. All right, guys, so now that I've touched on some of the pros and cons of all 3 devices or all 3 items, now we're going to go through the 7 different categories I've come up with, rank the 3, and then I'll give you the scores at the end. The way we're going to do the scores, if it scores in first place, it's going to get 3 points, second place will get 2 points, and third place will get 1 point. So the first category we are going to touch on is cost. First place in cost, that's an easy one. The Atlas, the thing's $8. And like I said, even if you had to buy them for the next 100 years, you're only up to $800. And I know we haven't factored in inflation, but you get my point. And in second place, we're going to have a tie between the GPS and the smartphone. While in most cases, the motorcycle-specific GPS costs about the same price or less than the smartphone, we're going to put them in a tie because there's a good chance you already have a smartphone. And yeah, this thing comes with a monthly data plan where this doesn't. We'll just call it a tie. We'll put them both in second place. Next category is ease of use. Now, while I was thinking about giving the Atlas first place, a lot of people don't know how to read a map or atlas, so I'm going to drop it down to second place. The smartphone's going to win the category because most people already have one of these. They know how they function, they know how they operate, so that is going to leave the GPS in third place. I don't think many people are going to disagree with me because these things can be temperamental and just not want to work right sometimes, especially when it comes into putting your routes and tracks and those sorts of things. So sorry Garmin, you're in third. Next category is durability, and we're going to have a tie in first place between the Garmin GPS, because like I said, this thing will take a beating, and the Atlas, because you can't break one of these things. So that means the smartphone is going to finish up in third place. The next category is reliability. We want a reliable device. We are once again going to have a tie between the GPS. And part of the reason the GPS is going to finish up tied for first place is, again, as long as we have a clear path to the sky, we should have a signal for the GPS. But we are going to put it in a tie with the Atlas because the Atlas always works. There's no way it can't work as long as you can see. And if you can't see, well, you shouldn't be riding a motorcycle. Anyway, we're going to put the smartphone in third place. The reason for that is we don't always have cell phone service wherever we are. So if it can't be relied on that heavily, it's going to finish last. Next category, which is a very important category for me, is trip planning. If you don't have a good plan to begin with, then your trip's probably not going to go very well. Now, I know there are people who are, I want to go on an adventure. That's great. I'm talking about trip planning here. I like to know where I'm going, and even if I need to deviate, the better plan I have, the more I can deviate off that plan and get back on it to eventually end up back home. So first place is the Atlas for the reasons I've already gone over. The second place finisher is the smartphone, and the main reason I put the smartphone in second place, while I don't like the map and GPS features as much as I like the map of the Road Atlas, the reason I put it in second place is you can use your internet browser to help do research and those sorts of things, where we don't have that feature on your motorcycle specific GPS, so we're going to put that back in third place. The next category is real-time updates. Now, I thought there was going to be a tie between the GPS and the smartphone. Ultimately, I decided to put the smartphone in first place because as long as you have a signal, you're always going to get real-time updates on this. So it's in first place. The reason why the GPS was in second place is because for most GPS units, you need a smartphone in conjunction with it in order to get real-time updates. So I can't really justify putting it in first when it's kind of going off the backbone of the smartphone. So the GPS is in third place, and there are no real-time updates on the Atlas, so it's stuck in third. And then my final category is detail. Now this can be used for trip planning. It can also be used during the trip and on-the-fly changes you need to make. So first place in detail, no big surprise. The Atlas, it just gives you so much more information than the other two devices give you, and that's why these two are going to be tied for second place. So those are the categories I came up with. Those are the things that are important to me. So let's go over the scores to find out who our winner is. In third place with 12 points, we have, no surprise, the smartphone. In second place with 14 points, we have the motorcycle-specific GPS. You guys are going to say I cheated here, but in first place with 18 points, we have the Atlas. I'm telling you guys, an Atlas or a map is the best thing you can have on a motorcycle trip. But that's not to say anything bad about these things. And let me tell you how I actually use all three for planning and pulling off my motorcycle trips. All right, so when it comes to planning my motorcycle trips, I start out at one of two places. I may have my computer out because there's some, special places I want to see, points of interest. But I normally start with my atlas, and I just open up to where I live, and then I figure out where I want to go, and I start looking at the points in between. This is my starting point. I usually have a pad of paper out, and I write down, oh, this route looks cool, and this is a point of interest I want to stop at, and those sorts of things, until I have at least a generic route. Then I pull it up on my computer, and I try to figure out how much time is it going to take to get to each place, to figure out what town I'm going to end up in at the end of the day. Are there hotels available there or lodging? You know, are there places I can get gas? I kind of use the computer to help me figure that out, because it may tell me, hey, yeah, you want to ride 600 miles today and it's going to take you 12, 13 hours, but I know I want to stop somewhere for 2 or 3 hours, so then I have to backtrack and figure all those things out. But again, you know, everything starts for me when it comes to trip planning with the atlas. Once I kind of have it mapped out, whether I use Google Maps on my computer or whatever the case may be, or maybe I just have a generic map written down from the atlas, then I start to build it out, and I build out my track or my route, and then that gets inputted into my GPS. And this is what I use on my trip, kind of on the fly. I mean, I've got it mounted there on my bike, and I've got the different days programmed in. So this is really what I use while I'm traveling. Now, like I talked about earlier, things are going to happen. You may decide to deviate off course. And at the end of each night, or at the end of each day, what I end up doing is I go, okay, where am I going tomorrow? And I pull this bad boy back out, and I restudy the next day's route. So in the event that I need to go off course, I don't have to worry about this thing screaming in my ear telling me, oh, turn left, turn left, turn left. Those sorts of things. I know where I'm going, and by studying the map or studying the atlas and knowing the area you're in, it's just going to make your life that much easier. So this is still probably my favorite. If I could take a motorcycle trip and I can only take one thing for GPS purposes, I'm not talking about this for making emergency calls or anything like that, it would be my atlas. But this is a valuable device, and some of the things I like it for, while I may know my entire route, I may need gas soon. So, you know, I can use this, and it's got some cool features built into it to let me know the next gas station on route versus, you know, radius, or maybe maybe I'm looking for a specific, you know, restaurant. Maybe I want Chick-fil-A that day, and I can look up a Chick-fil-A and find out there's one, you know, 30 miles up the road. Those sorts of things. It's awesome for that, to be able to do on the fly. So I'm not discounting the motorcycle specific GPS. I use one all the time. I just don't fully rely on it. They will make mistakes, and I know that if I've studied that map, I know it inside and out. I know my route, so I don't have to fully rely on the GPS. So what about the smartphone? I've used this thing before where I've kind of overridden my GPS because something funky's happened. I can't get off the bike to refer to my atlas, or maybe I'm in a major city or something like that. So I'll ask Siri to go ahead and route me out of a certain area. It's great for stuff to get you out of a pinch. It's also great if you're stopped for gas or whatever, to pull this bad boy open and find out what town's coming up next, where can we get lunch, you know, what time does something open, those sorts of things. They all three have their uses. I just really love these maps. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the motorcycle specific GPS versus the smartphone versus the atlas or map. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider hitting that subscribe button, because if you like motorcycles, this is the place to be. If you have any questions about how I use these three devices, you know, to plan or route my motorcycle trips, let me know down in the comment section below. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. This is just my preference. These were my opinions in today's video. But if you think I'm wrong, let me know why you think I'm wrong, and maybe I'll learn something new. And as always, I'll talk to you again soon.